Good catch.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. This is the Community Advisory Board meeting. This is a mic. How does it sound? Test, test. Better. Trying a new mic.
Testing.
This is Bill, not a mic. Okay, everybody. I'm Tom Hines. I'm the chair of the Community Advisory Board meeting. And would everybody like to introduce themselves on the Community Advisory Board? Go ahead, Scott.
Wait. Why don't you keep that? Keep that. Yeah, and pass it.
Check.
Check.
Nice to meet you, Chad.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Alright. You have to move that.
You can't stand right in front of these speakers.
Understood.
That's where you'll get feedback. It's better if you're sort of more centered.
Understood. This is going to be too much setup for a very short intro. My name is Scott Harris. I'm from Newlands, California, and I'm on the Community Advisory Board.
We'll see if this works. I'm Barbara Berger, and I'm also on the Community Advisory Board. I live in Eureka, and I have been on the board for a long time.
I'm Geraldine Goldberg. I live in Trinidad. I've been on the advisory board for a number of years. I'm a former longtime staff member at KHSU.
I'm Susie Jennings. I'm also on the CAB, and I'm from Southern Humboldt. And I've also been on the board for quite a few years. Okay.
Okay. Jonna Kirk-Levine, Eureka. I used to represent Southern Humboldt. I still have my heart in Southern Humboldt. And Ben, I think it's gone on 8 years for us. He and I joined the board at the same time.
Hélène Rivier, I live in Eureka. I joined the CAB when I moved back down here in 2013 from Happy Camp.
Thank you. My name is Ben Winker. I joined 8 years ago. I live in McKinleyville currently, but I've lived all throughout the area. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jado Ainong. I live in Hoopa. I work for the Europe Tribe, and this is my first year on the CAB.
Hello, I'm Jeff Russell. I represent KHSR from Crescent City.
And how many years, Jeff? More than you count?
I would say since about 96.
Right. Sweet. Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay, at this point.
Who are you?
Who are you? I've already done it. You were talking. Oh, yes, yeah. I like to be with the community. So at this point, we normally do adoption of our minutes from our last meeting. As everyone read through the minutes, are on the back of the agenda. And
You're welcome.
yeah. Jeff is our secretary. He's been doing this for a long time, and he takes great notes. He does a great job. So we'll read through this, and if anybody has any additions or anything you want to add to it. There's several CAB members who weren't here at our last meeting, so they're taking the time to read through it.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor? Or any more discussion?
I did.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Anybody abstaining? Oh, you were. Okay, very good, Susie. All right. Okay, at this point, I think because we don't have Peter with us tonight, we will move on to David Reed.
Can I ask why Peter is not here tonight, please? Why is Peter not here tonight?
Well, I'd like to introduce Craig Ruck. And Craig Ruck can answer that question and better than I can. Here you go.
My name is Craig Ruck. I serve as Vice President for Advancement here at Humboldt State. I supervise Peter Fredwell. I asked him not to attend this meeting, and I agreed to attend in his place. I did that for two reasons. One is Peter has become quite a lightning rod, and it was getting in the way of the CAB being able to do its work, so I wanted to stop that disruption. And also, frankly, Peter has been subject to quite a bit of disparagement and even slander, and as his supervisor, when I can, I try to protect people from going into environments like that.
Craig, is he going to be able to continue to not come to meetings in fear of?
I haven't decided yet. It really depends on what CAB needs.
Really? That's disturbing.
It is too, because he hasn't been to a meeting since April, May?
Peter attended the May meeting. He did not attend the June meeting. That was planned vacation.
Yes.
And then there's this one.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know.
David, can you?
Danger zone.
Or are you going to go behind the wall?
Building a wall.
Could someone get my notes?
Yes. Please.
Not saying you, Jesse, but you're the one standing right there. So I'd like some clarification on the agenda. As a former person who used to run board meetings, are you moving open communications? Because that usually comes first.
No, but my understanding.
Are you moving it to another part of the agenda?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
My understanding of open communications is if you have an elected board with responsibilities, then there are certain legal things that happen.
Okay. Just checking. I didn't want to step on stuff. So first I want to thank, I can't call on you, but Tom's back. Tom, turn your back.
I ask that only people with a microphone in front of them speak.
Oh, shoot,
And
okay.
it would help also if you face the audience, because it's very hard to hear what you say. Those of us who are hearing impaired need that to watch your face and hear the mic. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So everybody, I'm David Reed. I'm KHSU's Development Director. I usually do this report sitting down and usually not buzzing. Thank everyone who comes to these meetings, and thank you for showing your support for KHSU and your care. It really is an inspiration to me, despite the fact that there's angry words occasionally. It's uplifting to someone who has put so much of his time and love and care into this station. Guys, I actually don't have a huge report, but I'm glad to take questions. We're going to move the fall. We're going to have our next drive in fall. It'll probably be the end of September, beginning of October. I'm still debating, because we eliminated the summer drive, whether we'll be having to add additional time onto that. Actually, the fiscal year just ended, so in some ways the world is fresh and new. And have been doing a lot of analysis on last year's results as compared to the prior year, and also the sustaining numbers, because they change monthly, keep going up and up and up, and it's kind of hard to track how we're doing there. So when you guys don't have such a full agenda, I will give you a full report on that. Some of those numbers aren't even done. But I would love to take questions, and in the interest of people hearing you, you can have my microphone.
David, I have a question.
Microphone.
I have a question. What about our North Country Fair and us participating?
You guys are set. You have a booth there, so
Okay.
more power to you. I will provide volunteers as you need them.
Great, thank you.
We have a lot of people here who like KHSU. Would anyone else like to staff the booth at North Country Fair this year? We'll send around a sign-up sheet. It's usually fairly difficult to get people to staff the booth, but it is a great opportunity, and people are very appreciative when they come up to the booth. It's a pretty fun experience to talk with people who've volunteered for KHSU 20 years ago and are back into town, and you hear a lot of good stories. So if people are interested in volunteering at the KHSU booth at the North Country Fair, you can come talk to me after the meeting.
And amazingly, you get to listen. You get to meet young listeners, which is like doesn't get to.
What's the date of the fair?
15, 16.
Is that right? September 15, 16. I'll know by the end of the meeting.
It is. It's true.
Since I know your name, Rick.
Yes. Couple things. One is there going to be separate booths, or will there be separate booths for the CAB and one for KHSU? It'll be at one booth.
It's KHSU's booth. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, good.
CAB just staffs it for us. Kind of is the labor force, etc.
Okay. The other question is for you, Dave. How would you characterize the morale of the staff at the station at this time?
It's been rough. It's not great every day. It comes and goes. Today was bad, but yesterday was fine. So.
Can you tell us why the morale is bad?
Is that the part of the development director's job?
You're the guy standing up for KHSU.
Yeah, okay. There's a whole lot of actors acting on the station right now, and for those of us who work there, it becomes difficult to know from day to day what what your day is going to bring. And I'm just the fundraiser. I do the best job I can on that role. Depending on what people say on the phone to me that day, it affects my mood. It makes the next phone call a little more difficult. It makes the following email a little more difficult than that. You get the drift. I'm working on my meditation skills. I don't mean to be flip. That's actually really true. Being as most of you know, being in a creative job, a lot of times your mood starts to affect your job performance. I think I'm done unless Rick has any more questions. I'm not being a jerk.
Thank you.
I'm just.
Thank you for what you do, Peter.
No claps necessary.
Where's the question?
I have a question about the next pledge drive.
Yes.
Can you find out from JPR and KMUD when their pledge drives will be?
We will, although I will say there's two different schools of thought. KMUD and I don't know why I'm pointing to you. KMUD and I tend to coordinate whenever we can to not overlap, although it is surprising in the world of public media when there are multiple public radio stations in the same market, some places decide to do them all in the same week.
Yeah, like
on purpose.
On purpose.
On purpose, yeah, because then you don't have people switching. But KMUD and KHSU always try to coordinate to stay away from each other.
How about JPR? Last time they were on at the same time, it was really annoying. I couldn't hear music. It was all.
I'm a really nice person, generally, Bonnie, so I'm not going to say anything about that.
Just find out when their pledge drives are.
Okay. I will definitely do that.
Okay, thank you, David. Thank you. And I'd just like to make one statement that we are always looking for members. Sometimes we find members at the North Country Fair. Our newest member, who's not here tonight, is a student. And he is great, but he is home for the summer. But I met him at the North Country Fair. And hold it a little closer.
What? On an angle, yes.
Thank you, Helene. I'm not a professional like you are. Good. Now I am. Do you want me to start over? No. But basically, we're always looking for new members, people that want to join our group. And initiation is rough, but once you get through it, no, I'm kidding. Okay, that's what I want to say now. Thank you, David. Do we have any additional staff reports? Yes. Mike. Microphone?
I'll come up there. Not too much to add from, I'm Jeff DeMark. I've been underwriting for 16 years here. Since the initial drop in underwriting, which was substantial, it's pretty much leveled out. There hasn't been any new underwriters that have quit. We've stayed, nobody's been calling me about it. So that's been a positive so far. And, it was a drop for sure, but right now people are kind of, I guess, watching and waiting to see what's going to happen. And it's been reasonably, I think, stable so far. Lately it has been until a couple of things just happened.
What just happened?
Well,
David alluded to it, now you're saying it.
what happened?
Yes.
Well, there was a complaint yesterday from one of our staff members, and it was in the papers, it was in Los Angeles Outpost, so I haven't heard too much yet, but that is something that's out there. I'm sure that'll get aired. Other than that, we've had, it's been fairly stable, and I've been going out in the community, and I talk to people, I try to explain what's happening as best I can, and people are just wondering, are we going to have a pledge drive? We go, yes, we're going to have a pledge drive, and the programming has not changed dramatically, so that's been fine. Other than that, we did lose 30,000. If it's projected for the whole year, that's what we would lose. If somebody came back, it would drop. But and I'm just trying to beat the bushes, and lots of people are renewing, and a lot of people just go, they don't question. Some people do. They call me, I go to them, I talk to them about it, I say what I understand has happened, and they go, well, I'm going to stay until I see the programming change or something. And they say, call me up if you see another change. So I just try to do the best I can, keep the station going, and try to keep the faith as best I can, because I still believe in public radio, and I believe in the community. That's my job.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff does really a lot of work, and he's really to be thanked for what he does. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, John.
Any more staff reports, Lorna? Lorna, would you like to speak? Justin?
I guess the only thing that I would add to the climate and morale among the staff is that a lot of the folks I hang out with up in the studios are feeling the stress. They're reading the papers, they're getting calls from people up there, and so I'm pretty clear that a lot of them are going to seek counseling and find other ways of taking care of themselves, because it's a pretty horrible experience for them. So that's one thing I can add to the morale question.
So I'm the office manager, and I have been instructed that all of our volunteers need to fill out a volunteer identification form. It is for your benefit, and I'm working hard to get us into compliance. If you have not filled out a form yet, and you are here, I think you're here, please fill out a form and give it to me before the end of this meeting. List your actual duties, not flippant duties, but the actual duties that you perform at KHSU. Host a music show, community advisory board member, etc. And date it today's date. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorna. Does that apply to pledge volunteers?
That applies to pledge volunteers, but it is happening. I was going to say.
You got it? Okay.
During the training of volunteers, during the pledge drives, Monica Topping, the member liaison or membership liaison, she manages that. So if you volunteer as a phone answerer during our pledge drive, you take that up with her. This is for active, current volunteers who host a music program, CAB member, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorna. I'd like to thank Lorna. She does a lot of behind-the-scenes work that we don't see. She's constantly.
Can we thank Bessie too?
Yeah, Bessie. Who else am I forgetting? I want to thank all the staff, and it's incredible. I look around at this group of individuals. It's just amazing what they do. Alina, everybody. So thank you. Well, I think we're done with staff reports. Feeling pretty staffed up. Okay, at this point, we want to move on to new business, and this is something that really excites me. We're working on putting together this vision of KHSU's vision and purpose statement, and this has been prepared by the President's Cabinet, and I've asked Craig Ruck here today to kind of go through this. So he's got copies that he's passing around to us, and we have more copies for everybody else, so we can kind of get them going around. And I think at this time, no one's really looked at this. So, Craig, why don't you take?
Would it be okay if I stand up? I feel like I got my back to somebody no matter which way I turn.
I know.
And while that's making its way around, I apologize. I wasn't sure how many copies to make. Maybe this is. So maybe if you can just share and double up if there aren't quite enough copies. An extra one. Oh, okay. Okay, so one of the things that we really need to do is develop a strategic plan for the station. And as we started to consider that, a couple of things became apparent. One is there is a mission statement for the station. It's printed at the top of the page there. That's been long-standing. But try as we might, I really couldn't find detailed vision and purpose statements, which is what you need in order to be able to create a strategic plan. And as I talked to people, it occurred to me, and I have been using this analogy, and some people don't understand it. Do you all know the fable about the blind man and the elephant?
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of people have
Blind men.
Blind men and the elephant, right. Right, blind people. Correct. I'm sorry. It's an old Eastern, but blind people. So the story is several blind people encounter an elephant, and of course they can't see the elephant, so in order to describe the elephant, they're touching different parts of the elephant. And one who is touching the leg describes it as a palm tree. It's clearly a large tree. Another one grabs the trunk and describes it as a snake. It's clearly a snake. Another one grabs an ear and decides, no, it's a fan. And it goes on like that. And my observation is KHSU suffers some from exactly that kind of thing. There are people who believe that KHSU is a wonderful source of local programming, and it is. There are other people who really rely on KHSU as their source of national public radio programming. KHSU also offers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week Spanish language programming, and some people aren't even aware of that. We have a news and information service, and so KHSU is a lot of different things. Part of what we want to do is arrive at a consensus agreement of what exactly this radio station needs to be and how we need to organize ourselves in order to be able to fulfill that mission. The mission doesn't change. What you have in front of you on two different sides of the page is a proposed timeline and then a draft. So let me go through the timeline first, which will lead us to the draft. Timeline starts now. I asked Peter Fretwell, as the general manager, to come up with a draft vision and purpose statement for KHSU, and he did that in early July. That went to the President's Cabinet. The President's Cabinet spent a couple of weeks working it over, and what you see on the back page then is the discussion draft that the President's Cabinet wants to present today to the CAB. I would suggest that in August, the CAB ought to spend some time with this and revise it and make suggestions to it. It is simply a starting point. I would hope by the end of August we could have a response from the CAB. The Cabinet and the staff, then the KHSU staff, will take it and spend the month of September reworking it again and trying to come up with consensus on what exactly are the purposes. Why are we doing what we're doing? In October, I plan to contract with the California Center for Rural Policy to conduct a broad-scale public input phase. I want CCRP to do that because, first of all, that's their area of expertise. But I want to make sure that we get really objective input from the public, from the broad public. And with all of that input then, in November, it will come back to staff and the President's Cabinet to finalize. It all becomes a recommendation to the President in December. She will take that recommendation under advisement. She will consult with whomever she wishes to consult with, and then adopt the mission and purpose for KHSU. I hope to have all that done by the end of the fall semester, so by December. And that then will form the basis so that early next year we can start with a strategic plan and then develop concrete, tactical, year-to-year plans and goals and objectives. On the second page you will see, and I don't propose to read this to you, that's why you have it in front of you. You will see the overall vision, and then with the work of the President's Cabinet, we have come up with a suggestion of 8 purposes. I'm sure there are more purposes, but I wanted this as a starting point. So Tom, let me turn it over to you then.
Well, yeah, it's Barbara.
So I find myself being kind of disturbed to some degree about this process to date. Who are the President's Cabinet that have never had any involvement, participation with KHSU? We don't even know their names. Who are they to come and draft something without getting any input except for allegedly one member of the CAB and throw this out at us? I'm just very disturbed by this process. I think it was disrespectful of the staff and volunteers to go ahead and do this without asking us for input first.
So maybe I wasn't clear. We are asking for input. That's the purpose today. The President's Cabinet is the 4 vice presidents, the Senior Vice President for Human Relations, Human Resources, and the Director of Diversity and Inclusion. So it's the Executive Cabinet of the university. It seemed to me appropriate to ask them to create a straw man, a discussion draft for this group as a starting point. The university is the owner of the station, so it seemed appropriate to ask the university executive group to create a starting point.
Are any of the other members of the cabinet here today?
No.
And we don't know their names. We don't even know if they listen to KHSU. We don't know if they're members of KHSU, if they support the station themselves with a financial contribution like all of us do. We don't know anything.
And I'd like to know what the collective years of experience at the university and in the community these cabinet members have. Because when you look out at this audience, the collective years of experience in this community and to the station is exponential. It's hundreds of years of experience as members of this the station, former alumni. I mean, these people that I'm looking at wear so many hats in relationship to KHSU. They should have been the ones that were asked, not told, this is what we're going to work from.
Hello, my name is James Floss, a longtime volunteer at the station. I'm looking at the draft number 2, expand the diversity of the North Coast voices represented in local media, giving voice to those who have been historically underrepresented. I do a show at KHSU called Immigrant Voices, documenting the undocumented. My producer is Peter Fretwell, and you are his representative tonight. He's done one thing as my producer. He upset the apple cart and created stress. And it was part of a mix that led to somebody being fired. That's the one thing he's done as a producer. I'm telling you, as the representative of my producer, Peter Fretwell, I need a new producer in order to do what you want in your proposal, because it's not working.
You know the phrase, there's nothing new under the sun.
Hey, are we allowed
There's
to
nothing,
speak?
excuse me, there's nothing new under the sun in this document, I have to say. I was with KHSU 37 years, that's almost 4 decades, Mr. Ruck. And I look at this and I'm like, provide community service to the North Coast of California with local news, public affairs, programming focused issues, etc. We do that. Expand the diversity of the North Coast voices. We're doing it. We've done it. Serve as a hub for community dialogue. We do it. Support the mission of Humboldt State. We do it. Everything on here. We do it. What was so broken about this radio station that Peter Fretwell would take it upon himself, with your blessing, to fire Katie Whiteside, who held this thing together for all the decades I've ever known her? There was nothing wrong with this station. So why all of this?
Response?
Yes, I'd like a response.
Yeah, no more Charlie Brown administration. Wah, 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 wah.
Excuse me, Tom? Is this the method that you were going for? Because I would like to have the full presentation and then comment.
One at a time is better.
Okay.
You know, if I can just say that I like the fact that what you said is true. I like the fact that we're all here as community members, but I'd like to see us put together something instead of operating in the we all think, I think, we think. Actually putting together a vision, purpose statement. I'd like to see us do that. I'd like to see us do it as a community.
Well, what we're asking for is a dialogue, back and forth. We want a dialogue. And Mr. Ruck, I think you'd simply give us a dialogue and respond. I think that would be respectful, and I think it would be very helpful way for us to understand what you think about each comment. And I ask that we treat Mr. Ruck with respect.
So, Tom, I need your guidance, because this is currently a discussion draft for the CAB. My intention was not to usurp the CAB, but to do something more than just hand you a blank sheet of paper, to give you a starting point. I apologize if that seemed presumptuous. I really meant to be helpful. The idea is the CAB has a specific role, and I wanted to honor the role of the CAB to give them the first crack at it before we take it out for broad public input.
Then it should have gone out in an email to us. It should not have been presented to us in our meeting where we invite the public to be part of the conversation. Yes, this is a bigger public than we've ever had, but this is a necessary thing. And yes, you need to answer to the public, please.
This is the first time we've gotten a chance for the community to interact with the administration. So in a public setting, we're here to ask questions and learn. And we're going to work on this, I'm sure. This vision statement is going to be wonderfully worked on. but we have questions, and I would give it back to the people to ask the questions. And we'd like some answers.
Are you comfortable at this junction doing this?
Sure, I will do my best to respond to questions and comments.
Brenda, go ahead and stand up.
I don't think we want to be here.
I have a hard time getting up and down, so I apologize. My name is Brenda Starr, I'm a volunteer, and I've been a volunteer in public and community radio for 50 years. I've worked with doing vision statements, and I've worked with strategic planning. First of all, I want to celebrate the fact that you're finally doing the strategic planning, but I do want to reiterate what two CAB members have brought up, is that typically, in my experience, 50 years experience working and being a general manager, that you do include people first. You don't have just one person do that. So I think you kind of shortcut the process. My specific question is in regards to the mission. There's giving voice to, in that sentence, giving voice to underrepresented point of views, et cetera, reflecting public intellect and taste. That just stood out to me. It's like, what is public intellect and taste, and who gets to define that?
Brenda, that's a really old mission statement.
I don't care how
Yeah,
old it is, I'm asking the question today. in
Great,
present time.
and it may be that in this process we need to modernize the mission statement. I'm not at all opposed to that. And I am sorry, I really meant for this just to be a starting point, and I did not mean to shortchange you. At some moment, it had to be the first time that you saw it. I could have sent it out in advance. I thought it was better to present it to you all as a group.
Terry?
Are you seeking input on the design of the process to develop or to redesign your mission, vision, and purpose?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, as a former employee of the California Center for Rural Policy, and I did a lot of qualitative work there, we typically would start with the community first and then harvest those ideas, draw out themes, and then I would assume that next it would go to the CAB, and finally, you know, I guess the decision makers, rather than if you sift it around the other way, it's almost like it's a fully formed statements, and anybody who has worked on wordsmithing, mission and vision statements, it's a lot of hard work, and I think it's a lot easier to get the input from the community in the beginning rather than at the end.
I appreciate that. And let me be clear. It is not my intention that this is some manifesto that is being laid before you. It's just a starting point. I was trying to be helpful by giving you a place to start.
I'm Ryan Lee. I'm an on-air volunteer at KHSU. I would like to reiterate the point made over here that what was broken. There was nothing broken at KHSU. It's been a successful station for decades. That's just a statement. The second point I'd like to make is that you started this process a long time ago, and we are just getting let into it now. The firing of Katie Whiteside, the removal of some other people, pressure to get off the air, the harassment of staff, the general degeneration of morale at the station. It seems like there's been a concentrated effort to make a change, and nobody here knows what that change is. We've been in the dark, and so we just try to figure out what's going on. Something's going on. Somebody has an agenda, and we don't know what it is. And it seems like HSU is now the lesser financer of KHSU. The numbers have come out. It's the public that pays for KHSU, much more than HSU.
I need to correct that is incorrect. Humboldt State University provides approximately 45% of the support for the station.
That does not sound like a majority.
But it's the largest single share. So, to be clear, the station is owned by the university. That means fundamentally the station is state property. That's just the reality. And there are some things that flow from that. One of them is we need to be responsible for the use of state property. That's part of the reason Lauren is talking to you about the volunteer forms. It's integral to managing volunteer use of state property. So that's one of the things we have to work on. But make no mistake about it, Humboldt State University is the largest single shareholder, if you will. 45% of the support comes from the university. That is not to diminish any of the other sectors. They're very, very important. But the university is doing its share.
My name is Patty Hecht, and I'm not a volunteer for the station. I'm not a staff member for the station. I'm a community member, small business owner. I've been here for about 20 years, but I came up from the San Francisco Bay Area, where I grew up and loved KQED radio, KQED television. I was reluctant to come to a community that seemed pretty white, having come from there. But one of the saving graces for me that I felt that it was a more open-minded community possibly is KHSU Radio and KEEP TV, the public media sources here. It has these things, because I grew up with public television and information, radio, I grew up knowing the value of being able to have something beyond commercial sources of information. And I rely on them. I have also lived places where they haven't been available, and it's a stark contrast, and it's a frightening prospect to be somewhere where there isn't that available. The reason that I'm attending CAB meetings currently is my concern of what it appears to be happening with KHSU and KEEP, possibly, but KHSU in particular, that it looks like there is, I hope you're hearing, Mr. Rugg, that people are getting the sense that there's a top-down happening as opposed to ground-up, and that I hope that you understand that you do have a kind of higher educated and, by demographics, population in Arcata and beyond in Humboldt County, and also very concerned populace. We're not all like-minded, we don't agree, we're not in the same party of politics or anything, but, and I'm sorry I'm going on. But I feel that the perceptions, a lot of times within communities, what it comes down to as far as being able to have peaceful dialogue, civil communications and so on, is trust. There's a basic trust in the sense of safety. And I feel that some of the actions of the university lately concerning the football program, concerning the 3rd Street Gallery, and probably other things I'm not aware of, have that same feeling of a hidden agenda and a top-down and a kind of bait and switch where the community is reassured everything is fine, and then things turn around and it's too late. I am a contributing member, or a member of the station who contribute money, but I really have been concerned about, I don't want to unplug public information. I really don't, and I don't want the station to go down. I'm concerned that the hidden agenda is, we're going to go to total streaming of information, we're going to get rid of all the volunteers, we're just going to reduce this because it's a pain in the butt, and maybe we can save some money. Or, we're going to get rid of the station because there's GPR down here, or anything that is less than what we have. And this is a very valued station. This university is valued, so I just need to say that. Thank you for listening.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Let me just observe, I think one of the reasons this feels so abrupt is that, frankly, the university, as the owner of the station, had been kind of absentee for a long, long time. And it feels like the university is intruding. And it's really just that the university has become more aware of the public radio service that it provides. So I apologize for that. There's been reference to a secret agenda. I'm here to tell you, if there's a secret agenda, I am not aware of it. One of the reasons that I wanted to work through the President's Cabinet first was to test that. If the President's Cabinet has decided that there is no future for KHSU, there's no point in doing this. That's not the case. We want to have this public radio service. We want to improve it, That is not to say that there is anything in particular wrong with it now, but I don't think that anybody is perfect. And so it's really an attempt to take this treasure that we have, improve it, grow it, and that's why we come here. And I apologize that it seems abrupt. It's not meant to be.
You know, every month we meet as a community advisory board, and we're told about current things that are happening, and new programming, and new resources, and new adventures, and new directions for the station, for the community. Why didn't you ever bring up anything before?
I believe the first time I met with you was in June, and it has to start somewhere. That's when it started.
6 years.
I'm just wondering what your tenure was like.
Oh, I've been here since 2012. 6
What's your
years.
favorite local program on KHSU?
Yes.
I enjoy Thursday night talk, but I will be honest with you. My favorite programs are Morning Edition and Democracy Now!
Local programs.
I understand what you said, and I'm expanding to tell you my favorite programs really are Morning Edition and Democracy Now! Amy Goodman is a hero of mine. I don't get to listen to her very long.
So what's going to happen to local programming?
What we are trying to do here is very complicated. We are trying to create a hybrid of a station that is local programming, that is community radio at its best, a station that includes public radio, NPR-style radio, a station that speaks Spanish, a station that has 24-hour news service. It would be much easier if we were trying to do one thing. Part of what makes this so fascinating is we're trying to create a true hybrid. And I don't know how else to do it, but to start with the vision and purposes.
May I speak, please?
We're already what you just described.
Yeah.
KHSU is what you just described that you're looking for.
You're looking at the experience. This paper is who we are. That's what I don't understand.
I would like to, my name's Danielle Orr, and I am so upset because you lowered the boom on all of us. You said to me personally, you brought Fretwell here to be a change agent. Okay, I don't know what that means, but I do know that you and Peter Fretwell created a horrible atmosphere. And for everyone involved, the community, all of us who spend hours and hours chasing down people to interview, stories, hosting the NPR, you know, we've all been very involved, and we were your friends. And HSU comes in, you come in and decide that it's time to whatever you want to do, but you didn't even do it with any civility. All these things here, did you have any respect or civility? Did you guys? Nothing. And the reason you're getting hammered in the public, in social media, at work, we're all getting hammered because we're all suffering this. And I speak on behalf, like, I don't personally have anything against you, but you guys made a huge error in judgment. This is the leadership we are expected to follow, to respect. You had no respect. You shut down all of us at this first staff meeting after Katie was terminated. That act in itself was war. You put us all into a zone where, wow, what's happening? Never, you didn't communicate with the CAB, you didn't communicate. I understood from your comments, you find the volunteers to be old, you know, we're a bunch of egos. And now you're in charge, and both you and Peter said, you're both in charge now, and we are to do what you say, regardless of what we feel about it. So, you know, what is that? It's not civility. Many of us attended HSU. We are beloved people of this university, this town, our radio station. I can't even count the amount of hours that I personally have put in along with all my friends here. And you know what, you acted like that was just like, when are you gonna leave? And every day I decide, should I stay? Should I leave? You know, if you don't value any of what you're doing, which this is what it seems like, and that's why the aggression and the anger. You guys made a big mistake, and I don't know why you brought Peter here, but nothing's working with him anymore at the station. If you want him to be our GM, I mean, he's not even here.
Yeah.
You know, we have to be here. You think we're not shaking and upset? And slander? You say he was slandered? No, he did something egregious. They walked her out after her radio shift on a Wednesday afternoon. I know you're bored, I'm going on, and you know what happened.
Yeah.
But you know, really, she was walked out after her shift. Go get your stuff after 23 years. Give me your cell phone, and you shut down her email. You know, what kind of respect and civility is that? She's a middle-aged person she's been here, devoted her life. What, there's no management that can make things better? So we all understand that you are going to do what you're going to do, and we're supposed to be quiet. And so I just think that's something you should consider, because you guys, you could back up and start a different process. Of course, we all want KHSU to be better, more interesting, more relevant. That's what we're all doing. We can only do that if our leadership supports that. So I appreciate that, you know, now you're going to pay attention, and now, but you know, while you guys have not been paying attention, we have. And we've been doing it. No money. No money. We've been doing it for you. So I don't like the aggression aimed at you or Peter. But you know what? You both kind of deserve it a little bit.
And you can nod meekly and pretend you're listening to us.
So, you know, just take that into consideration, because there was no reason for you guys to come in and act like we're a bunch of hoodlums. We're not. We're not hoodlums. And this stuff about, oh, we haven't FCC rules and smoke screen. No. So, you know, really, if you disrespect us, like I asked you in that meeting, just say it out loud. You know? Don't pretend. Because this pretending thing is just not working for any of us. And we support KHSU, and we want it to succeed. We live here. Peter's going to leave. I don't know what your plans are, but you're most likely not going to stay here. We are. We care. You know, do you guys have no heart anymore? I mean, really. So that's why this is all the way it is. Because of that one act, firing Katie like that. You could have come in and said, we're going to have a strategic this and that, or we're going to do this and that. No, just blow up the station. And now we all have to come and be on the air and be cheerful and perky and represent. Do you know what that's like? It's impossible. So, you know, we're all behind it, but really, you guys didn't do well. And it's upsetting. And that's the only reason everyone's so upset. And we're all here during a dinner time, including you. And Peter's not here. He can't even, you know, what does that even say? So thank you.
So if I can respond, Danielle, I believe that you said that I said that volunteers weren't worth it. I did not say that. I do not believe that. The station depends on its volunteers. I have the greatest respect for the volunteers. I'm sorry that I conveyed it that way. I didn't say
You said we were like
volunteers.
old extended family. And you said,
No, I
how
never
long
said
have you
that the
been hanging
volunteers
around?
are like extended family. I never made
How
disparaging
long have you been
comments.
hanging around?
I'm sorry you're putting words in my mouth. I
No,
never
those,
said those things.
I know.
Secondly, there has been talk, and I've heard it again now, that the FCC violations are trivial and minor. They're not. They were FCC violations that, had we been caught, would have resulted in fines.
Actually, didn't they call in to report those? FCC
Just a minute, I'll get to that.
Didn't they actually report them? Because that's what they have to do.
I'm going to explain that in a minute.
Didn't you
So
tell
they were
us that?
violations that, had we been caught, would have resulted in fines. Those fines would have been levied against the trustees of the California State University. On my advice, Peter called the FCC and self-reported the violation.
And you told us that they kind of laughed at him.
Here's what that resulted in. That resulted in the FCC recording the violations but not fining us. So I think that was a good thing to do. But there is no such thing as a trivial or minor violation of federal regulations.
I don't think we disagree that we understand that those violations
Right,
are
but I keep
important.
hearing in the community that that was trumped up, trivial. I'm hearing hissing even now.
No,
It's serious.
we understand that it happened and that it was reported, but we also believe that, I'm not speaking for anyone else, my apologies there. I don't think we feel that 1, 2, 3 violations within a short period of time are necessarily warranting firing someone. That's very upsetting. And
So can I respond to that?
yes, please.
Katie Whiteside was not fired for FCC violations. So please don't say that, don't believe that. As you all know, I cannot discuss the personnel action, and I understand how frustrating that is. All I can tell you is there were actions taken leading up to that. We treated her as well as you can treat an employee who is terminated. And I'm sorry that I cannot share the details with you. It's a personnel matter.
Well, let me ask Peter, or Craig, I'm sorry. It has been my understanding from more than a few staff members that both Peter and yourself have been known to yell at staff members. And, basically what I would describe as rip someone a new one. That strikes me as extremely unprofessional. I believe the people that have told me this. I really do. I don't think, short of telling somebody to watch out for something that's going to fall on them, there's no reason for yelling to occur in the workplace. And it's very distressing to me that it has occurred not once, not twice, but repeatedly and with several people. And I feel like, you're apologizing a lot, and that it's disingenuous that you have, as Danielle said, you have completely misjudged this community in the 6 years that you've been here. Or maybe not the rest of the community, but when you got to KHSU, you completely have misjudged the target here. And I don't see, telling us that you thought you were doing us a favor by putting together these statements. I've been on committees before for creating these statements, and like she said, you don't start at the top, you start at the bottom with those. And even just an email to us in the last 2 months, hey, we're going to be working on this, we'd like to invite your input. But no, you've started at the top. A small enclave of well-paid people sitting up in an ivory tower who are not going to tell all of us, give us these suggestions of yours.
So let me just correct one thing. The Community Advisory Board had a closed meeting with President Rosbacher and me in June. I don't remember the exact date. At that meeting, we discussed that we would be working on a vision and purpose statement. And we actually talked a little bit about the outline. It's more concrete now. So it is not true that we didn't consult with you at all.
I don't recall you telling us that you were going to give us something. I was at that meeting.
Yes.
I don't recall us being told that you would be grafting it and giving it to us.
Okay, and again, my purpose was to give you a starting point. not a mandate, not a finished document.
So I just have, I do want to ask a specific question. You've mentioned budget a couple of times, and I know in all my years in CAB, I recall times where we were told, well, the university, has given us this much this year or covered, there's this in kind, and we've got these grants, but I don't recall necessarily ever seeing an annual budget review of any kind where we see real numbers and we see, what the projected expenditures were and the actual expenditures and the projected incomes and the actual incomes. And I'm curious as to why that's not something that, it's nice to know that the university does 45%. Where can we see that?
So if you go to the KHSU website right now, you will find KHSU's annual financial report. It's a required report of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It lists 2 years worth of exactly those figures. Those figures come from the audit that's conducted by Clifton Larson and Allen, and the financial accounting is done by the university. So it is all there and has been for years.
And one final comment I'd like to make, hopefully I'll be done. Point out that the university owns the license, but I would also like to point out that as citizens and taxpayers in California, we kind of own the university. So please keep that in mind too.
Actually, only mine got the mic. I'll give you the mic after. My name is Lisa Ann, and I am a listener. And I've been a volunteer, and I was a sustaining member, and I've pulled my sustaining membership. I'm concerned about the labor practices used right now. I'm really concerned about the latest stuff that's come out in the news about how you treated one of the staff members. I don't know if you quite get how tight-knit this community is, how one person knows somebody, they bump into them at Wildberries or at the co-op or at the post office, and that we know what's going on. People talk, and it does feel arrogant is what it feels like. It feels like people coming and trying to make Humboldt something that it isn't, and take away what a lot of us moved from bigger areas to gain. We want that small town feel. I like the quirkiness of the local programming. I don't want KHSU to be slick. I like to hear the bumps now and then. I like to know that if I have something important that I want the community to know, I can go to KHSU and have a moment on the magazine, or talk to Lorna and have, tell her, hey, I heard about so-and-so, and maybe you could talk to them. I am very afraid that this is changing, and it does feel like after the bomb that was dropped by firing Katie, this now feels top down again, and I put my money with businesses that treat their employees well. I don't feel that that is happening at KHSU right now. The staff isn't happy. The volunteers are not happy. It makes me sad to listen to KHSU right now because I know that there's this whole undercurrent going on. So even though these volunteers are being very professional, and if you didn't know what was happening, you might not hear it in their voices, but I do. And it's not joyful. And I miss, it makes me very sad. It's like a joyful part of my life. And as I said at the first CAB meeting that I attended, that you were not at, I'm an artist and I'm alone a lot, and KHSU is company to me. And right now, it's like I've got a depressed friend in my room. So I really want to hear from you, and I'd like you to respond to what I say. It is really scary what Danielle was saying, and I don't know your name in the purple, but she spoke eloquently What is this hidden agenda? Is there a hidden agenda? Is the boom going to be dropped? Is it going to be too late? Are we all being hoodwinked by you?
Okay. And if I can respond.
Yeah.
The allegations of intimidation and abuse and hostile workplace really came to my attention in May. Following the termination of Katie Whiteside, I consulted with our HR office and I offered to meet one-on-one with each of the KHSU staff members. I have met with most of them. I think there are 2 who have not taken me up on that. I promised them in those one-on-one discussions that I would keep everything that was said confidential, and I'm not about to break that promise. And I wanted to know from them, what is the work environment? And I had several questions that I asked each of them. I'm not about to break the confidence. I will not get into specifics of who I talked to, but I will give you my overall assessment. My overall assessment is the staff is deeply divided. There are some staff members who want Peter Fretwell fired immediately and are pretty clear that they won't rest until that happens. There is another contingent of staff members who are quite upset with that first group, but for whatever reason they don't feel that they can speak up about it. And the largest group of staff members are somewhere in the middle. They really would just like to go to work and wish that all this turmoil would go away. In each case, when people had specific allegations, I encouraged them to take it to the HR office. There is a process, and it escalates. The place to go if you feel that you are being intimidated, if you feel that you are being bullied, the place to go is the Human Resources office, not talking to one another about it. I now am the subject of one of those complaints, so naturally the HR office cannot discuss with me whether or not those complaints have been brought forward. But that's the way we ought to deal with it. So I am very sensitive to the situation with the staff. I would also say, I agree, it's a caustic work environment. And my observation is that didn't start with Peter Fretwell. There has been stress and tension among that staff for quite a long while.
You're wrong.
It may have gotten worse.
You are contributing. You're completely wrong about that.
Well, I'm sharing my observation based on the interviews I've had.
I think that you and Peter created that.
Yes.
You didn't come into the situation with these problems. You have to help create them. You've developed division, you've developed intimidation, so people naturally turn against each other.
Right, or perhaps it was submerged in the past.
Or perhaps not.
Could I have the mic? Thank you. Hi, I'm Halima, and I've been a volunteer for nearly 30 years. I was not intending to talk tonight because I'd like to be able to come to a CAB meeting when they can actually do their job as CAB members, but I think it's important that we're still having this dialogue. I was so hopeful when Peter was hired. I went to all 3 of the candidates' meetings. I liked Peter, he's intelligent, he speaks well. I was so looking for leadership that would take us to that next level, to, expand our services, to be a team player. After he'd been here a couple of months, he told me in a one-on-one conversation that he requested that we were dysfunctional, that we were ego-driven, and he wanted to clear those kind of things up. And so I mean ego-driven probably because all of us DJs just do it for the glory. So I have been really disappointed. I'm really sad too, because Peter could have, if he had encouraged communication. We asked him, we haven't had any staff volunteer meetings for a long time. There's plenty of other ways you can get information. That's not just the point of it. He could have, if he saw so many people saying, let's get together, he could have done that for us. And we would have said, thank you. We appreciate that. So unfortunately, his leadership has You know, he hasn't been transparent. There hasn't been a transparent process. We don't trust him. As I was at that first meeting, I told him at that staff meeting that I really wanted to trust him, but I don't. And that's partly because we don't know what's going on. We haven't. And so rumors, you know, rumors get. Anyway, that's basically what I wanted to say. I would love to see a turnaround. If Peter has qualities that you respect, I would love to see a turnaround and see him approach us and include us and make us one community again. That's my wish.
Hi, boy, that's loud. I'm Alan Sam Morton, and I just wanted to say something about your figures about the 45% of funding. I read the audit, and it doesn't show that in that audit. But one thing is HSU uses in-kind things like the studio, the facilities, as part of their funding that they justify the figure that you're now giving us. However, over the past 30 years, a lot of us have bought that stuff. And public CPR grants have bought that stuff. And so it's sort of, you're kind of splitting a difference. 45% is not what, if you consider that we bought a lot of that equipment and a lot of those transmitters and stuff, that 45% figure doesn't hold. So in other news, there's a book called Secrets or something like the Lessons from the Hanoi Hilton. And it talks about when the leader of a group is taken out by the enemy, that the others band together in solidarity. So I think that's kind of what's happening here. You're kind of looked at as the enemy at this point in time, and these people are banding together and supporting each other with strength, especially the very strong women. And it seems like very strong women are the people who are getting the most flack from the administration above them at this point in time. You came here, I think, with a community relations background. I think that was your selling point to come here. It doesn't seem to be working.
Can you move to the left, 2 steps?
I don't know which is my left. This
The
one?
only left you have.
Oh, okay. Yes, square dancing was hell. Anyway, a lot of us are smarting not just about this, but right now, Lisa Rossbacher is down south voting on a $9,000 raise to her salary. While other things are being cut right and left, we're still smarting for the cancellation of the nursing department. That really hurt our community. We're still smarting about those stupid gates all around the university that took a lot of money that could have been used elsewhere. We're still smarting from the Children's Center being, well, I gotta get out of there. The Children's Center being cut somewhat. We're smarting from from the head of the Ethnic Studies Center being just pulled again with no explanation. There are a lot of things that the university has been doing in the past 6 years, since you've been here, that are not conducive to creating a good feeling with the community. This community has been 100% behind HSU, because that's why we're here, almost all of us. That's why we're here. This university is all we have in Arcata and Humboldt County, really. You know, even weed is gone. I mean, this is the last thing we've got, and this is us. We're integral, really, it's integral to who we are. We're smarting over the fact that the university hid their involvement with the Village Project over the past 2 years. This is a very deceitful, collusion-oriented administration right now, and you represent it. So we're having a hard time with you. One difference between, I realize the CSU system is not Arcata, it's not Humboldt County. They have very different missions and very different goals. The university is here to support the students of California. I realize that. That's not what Arcata or Humboldt is here for necessarily. Nonetheless, KHSU is not billed as HSU Radio. It is billed as a community radio station. And this community has worked for, built, volunteered for, really made this radio station what it is. And we're really hurt. And getting rid of Katie Whiteside, I mean, you will be forever remembered, you and Peter, as the people who fired Katie Whiteside. Katie Whiteside is community to us. She is one of the finest members of this community, and we all love her. So that's over and done, but don't expect much respect for the rest of us unless both of you either walk back or walk. Thank you.
So if I may, just to correct actually several things. My background is not in public relations. My background is actually in fundraising. I spent most of my career at the University of Minnesota and then Minnesota State University, and specifically in the area of plan giving. I do have an undergraduate degree in journalism from the University of Utah, and my job here does include external relations and marketing and communications. The matter of the university's in-kind contribution, I have heard a lot of conversation that we should just ignore that. I'm sorry, you cannot, because you cannot operate a radio station without a studio and transmitters and equipment. So that is an important part of the university's contribution. It pays for those. That is general fund expenditures. It is true some of that equipment was purchased with contributions. Those were charitable contributions to the University Advancement Foundation. The equipment is purchased and then given to the state. It becomes state property. So make no mistake about it, it is a significant contribution from the university. You said that President Rossbacher is in Long Beach voting on a 3% raise. That's totally incorrect. First of all, she is here. I talked to her this afternoon. She does have to attend the CSU trustee meeting. She is not a voting member of the trustees, so she voted on nothing. The trustees, in fact, voted a 3% pay increase. So that's where the $9,000 figure comes from. I can't remember what else. There were several incorrect statements.
I just want to briefly address. I'm Russ Cole. I've been here for 40 years as a volunteer. One of the things that I heard that you said at a recent meeting is that KHSU has been dysfunctional for 40 years. And I would like to know...
Okay, I'm sorry, can I stop?
Yeah.
I never said KHSU has been dysfunctional, much less for 40 years.
Yes, you did.
I heard you. I'm sorry.
Maybe I'm wrong. I heard from more than one source. All I'm going to say is, how would you know that? You've been here for 6. By your own admission, you had said that you hadn't really been paying that much attention to the station until recently. So I'd just like to know how you came to, and you just said that before Peter got here it was dysfunctional. Well, how do you know that? As someone who's been here and has worked with all these people for a very long time, occasionally there are some little problems, but I mean the last 6 years or so it's been remarkably stable. People have been getting along, people have been doing their work, have been doing good work. I haven't really seen any dysfunction. So this idea that it's a ingrained, institutionalized thing is wrong. Peter was here for a year before this sort of thing started to happen, but I saw early on that he was not trustworthy for reasons I will not go into here. It's other people that experienced it. We now have, we're about to move our studios. There is no communication with us virtually at all about how that's going to go down, how we're going to make that change. It's an enormous thing. It's the kind of thing you need to have everybody on board working towards that goal. I realize the workers have their work to do, the construction workers. Kevin Sanders has an enormous job, technically, to do that. But we're not being communicated on how this process is going to go, which I just find staggering. And also, in the 2 months since Katie was fired, neither you or Fretwell has communicated with the volunteers at all. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I just find that incomprehensible from a management standpoint, that you could just figure everything's, just go ahead, just do your job, just keep doing great radio, which we have done. And you've created chaos with the firing of Katie, regardless of whatever your reasons were. But there's been no goodwill to try and fix it in some way. I mean, when Peter, granted, he came to that meeting, he was lambasted by, comments in that whole meeting. And he sat there and took it, I understand. He could have stood up at the end of it and said something to us, saying, look, I understand, you're upset, I am going to try and make it right. He's never done that, never said a thing. What does he do? He hides out in his office all day. I've heard this from everybody that works there. He basically does not engage with the staff. How can you run a radio station or any organization if you don't talk to the people who work for you? That's my question. If he's going to run this radio station and he needs to do something. He's not doing anything visible, tangible to any of us. And if you're his supervisor, you need to make him talk to us or do something. That would be good management, which I have not seen at all in this whole debacle.
So if I may, my observations about KHSU's operations and its staff are neither new nor shallow. Ed Supkus reported to me, so I had 5 years of observation, close observation, before hiring Peter. So I take that very seriously. I also do not micromanage my managers. I have 4 managers. I trust them to do what they're supposed to do. Regarding Peter's appearance at this meeting, it was my choice for him not to come here. And I have to tell you, to have mocked the man's clothing, even worse, to have criticized his religious and political beliefs based on something that people assume. How dare you? There is no political...
Who did that?
There is no...
Who did that? Who mocked his
I can go
clothing?
dig out the letters that were published.
Okay, well, I haven't heard any of those things, so I don't know if it was private letters to you, that's one thing.
No, there were letters
Excuse me, Mr. Rudd, that is an example of this community that you live in. We all, many of us in this room, have come to the defense of people because other people have mocked them for their political, when they were running for campaigns, for their looks. That's what happens here. This shows again how you do not understand the community that you live in. If you're going to pick on anyone who said something derogatory and not understand who they were who said it for the first part of it, and you're going to tell us that we were in the wrong for that happening to Peter, it's happened to so many of us in this room because of something that they've done on their radio show or a song that they've played or their political views, standing out on a street corner with a certain group, or even saying hello to somebody who's standing on a street corner. Somebody's going to lambaste them at some point. That's just the community that we live in. It's a small town. It just, again, shows that you do not understand where you are living.
So if I may, in my world, it is absolutely unacceptable for someone to persecute someone else for their religious or political beliefs. What is worse, for their perceived religious or political beliefs? Because I'm here to tell you, none of you knows Peter's beliefs. And yet, people in the community, people at the first meeting said that.
No, they didn't. That meeting has been recorded.
Yes. So if I may go on.
Let him speak.
If I may go on. One or more persons hold the office of the Inspector General in Washington, D.C. to complain that management was using the radio station to further his personal religious and political beliefs. How dare you do that?
Why are you
To take one instance and to make that a truth is simply a fallacy. That may have happened, but that's not what happens all the time. You are Vice President of University Advancement. I'm not seeing advancement tonight.
And you can't say you as a plural you. You're talking about a few people doing
Yes.
something. So you're addressing this whole room as if we said that. And I don't appreciate that.
Okay, and allow me to apologize. No, not this whole room. But there are individuals in this community who are attempting to undermine, to brutalize Peter Fredwell based on what they assume.
Go past
are his
that, let's
beliefs.
go back to the manager
Jealousy.
question. Sir, I would like to see better management at the station. From what I've heard, I'm a business owner, I'm an underwriter. And I don't want to continue underwriting while this is going on where I'm seeing Peter being not necessarily a great manager in this situation, not bringing people together and not coming up with a plan for the move. Anything that you're doing which is a move to a new station requires communication with the staff, a list of duties, a timeline, and none of that's happening. So just not even addressing the personnel problems that we're hearing about, and I understand there were complaints about Peter before Katie was fired. So, you know, you as his supervisor, if you were just in a business and this was anywhere else and it wasn't as public as this, you would be addressing your manager and trying to get him to change his behavior.
Yes, and I am doing that. Let me deal with this issue of the move, because that keeps coming up. It is not true that there is no plan for the move. The move is well planned out. It is a minor part of a $37 million project on campus. The studios will be temporarily moved to Fireworker House over by the library in LK Wood. The build-out starts right about now. The plan is to move the studios during the first week in September. I don't have any more to report than that because there are so many moving pieces. I can't tell you the details, but it will happen and we are managing it.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Knight. I used to be on the CAG, which is now the CAB, and I'm a little concerned about your understanding of what the role of this body is, because when Katie was fired, rules and regulations weren't followed. They were supposed to be notified and included, and it seems like there's been lots of comments tonight from the board feeling like they're not being respected, they're not being included in decisions, and just even an email saying, hey, we're thinking about this, what do you folks think? My concern is the timeline. You say in August, the CAB will discuss and provide suggestions, changes, and improvements to the discussion draft. The CAB represents the public, so they need input from the public in order to inform you. But you don't really take into broad public input until October. So I have problems with the timeline just because it shows, again, you don't understand what this board is. So I would just like to say that you have to change your timeline. You've got to start getting broad input, and you've got a lot right here. And then you ask the CAB, and the CAB has taken a vote of no confidence on your general manager. So we've got a situation where you've got to start listening and using this board properly. You've got to start reading the bylaws and making sure you're following them. And you also can't come up with timelines like this that think that the CAG can speak for the public before you ask the public. So I'm just having a hard time with this document. I know people have a lot of emotions, but even this document doesn't quite represent this meeting here. Because you have wonderful volunteers right here in your CAG, and you're not respecting them, you're not following policies and procedures, and you're coming up with timelines that don't make any sense.
Okay, I'd like to talk to the Community Advisory Board. I'd like to ask them, if normally we adjourn at 8 o'clock. I'd like to know, do you want to stay here longer?
I previously recommended that we consider extending our meeting tonight and didn't really get any response to that. I sent that out in an email. So I would like to stay. I think we need to stay. I agree.
2, 3. I'd like to make a motion that we extend the meeting for another hour.
Second.
Revisit that. Discussion? All in favor?
I vote against that.
Okay.
They need to go. I mean, it's understandable people need to leave.
but I think that fairness to the community here again tonight, again, we're almost 50 people in this room that are here that need some, they're trying to work things out for themselves on so many different levels. Their commitment to the station financially, their commitment to the station in terms of their volunteer efforts. These are all things that why these people are here. And they do represent a larger part of the community, a positive part of the community. And we owe it to them to stay longer. If you have to leave, I'd say go. Because we understand that, some people have responsibilities that they need to attend to. But I for one, will stay.
Are we voting on that?
Yeah, I'd like to. Great.
If I may, another meeting would be another possibility. Another town hall forum sort of meeting, which would give the CAB the space it needs to do its work, but you could still be here and have the benefit of all of it. But instead of trying to do it all.
Yeah, HSU willing to hold a town hall meeting, possibly with Ross Walker, Brett Will, and yourself? Is that something
Yeah,
that's
I
on
will ask her, and I will consider.
Lisa, mic, please. The mic.
I will ask the president, and I will consider having Peter do that.
Okay, we have a couple of other community members that wanted to speak, so I want to make sure that they get a chance. They've been waiting.
But wait 1 second, does everyone understand what we just said? That we're thinking of extending the meeting, but not necessarily saying it tonight, to respect everybody's time, but having more of another town hall.
I drove an hour and a half to be here tonight. I'd like it to be tonight, just saying, just for me, It's almost traveled a long way to be here.
What was that again?
I said, I traveled an hour and a half to be here tonight. My travel time was an hour and a half to be here tonight. That's how important this is to me. And I would rather limit the number of meetings and come less often, but I'm willing to come later. But I think we're all here, and I think there seems to be a majority of people who are willing to stay.
Vote.
Okay.
Maybe you could cut the difference extending the time.
What?
Maybe you could cut the difference and say a half hour extra and then, so it's not.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I like the suggestion was made to extend the meeting another half hour. Any more discussion?
Previous motion. I need to know previous motion. I don't see any reason why we can't do both. We can extend this as long as we want for an hour and have another town hall meeting.
Right.
Yeah. So what are we going to do? An hour?
Yep. The motion was for a 1 hour extension. We have a
Up to
second.
an hour.
To extend the meeting.
Wow.
Motion is to extend. Okay.
All right.
That meeting went out.
Everybody in favor of this one?
Aye.
All right. We will extend the meeting. Anybody that feels after me?
Yeah, we're all,
Okay.
we're all grown up.
We're good, Tom.
And I'm gonna have to leave in 2 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
But you understand.
Okay, we'll extend the meeting.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Ash. And, I've lived here a long time and been listening to KHSU off and on for a long time. I came tonight in response to the letter that came into my inbox from Lorna Bryan and thought how wonderful it was that this woman spoke out and CC'd everybody all over the place. I think that was great. I was a student here in the 70s. And I wanted to, I guess, more address what Lorna was talking about. As a student in the 70s, I participated in a diversity committee with then President Macron. And we had subcommittee meetings and came up with profiles of things to create a diverse campus. Did that again in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. It's been going on forever here. And I think part of that is the culture of the top down, which has been here in all the presidents that I've seen come and go over the years. I worked here in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, until just not too long ago as a federal grant employee, which is kind of like being a second-class citizen for, it's kind of understandable in a way. I give you an example of how the top-down goes. Our program moves 5 times in 20 years. The first time we found out we were moving was there were all these strange people coming through our office, looking around at your office space. You're going, what's going on here? Oh, you find out months later that you're moving. And that's the story. The last move, you get moved, and then they ask after they plan and do the whole space, oh, what is it that you do? You know, I mean, this is how this university conducts its business. So it's not particular. With this man here, it's just systemic in the system. It's like fish not knowing they're in water. But I'm very happy to see it, which is kind of sad in a way that it would do this to KHSU, but it's erupted out into the community now. You could look at it that way. Also, because I worked on the admissions side of the university, things began to change as universities all over adopted the business culture. And admissions and records became enrollment management. And everything became centered around business words. So now people no longer come to learn in critical thinking, it's to get a job, to have a career. So it's this whole cultural shift that's kind of landed here in everybody's laps around KHSU. But that makes me hopeful because there's more voices to be heard, and hopefully something will come of it to draw in more people, and that there's so much sense of community here that it will benefit everybody. And so that's just kind of what I wanted to say. Thank you.
So my name is Phil. I'm the owner of Wild Berries Marketplace, and we are the largest, I believe, business underwriter of KHSU, and have been for many years, and it's my intention to continue to do so. I met with Dr. Rosbacher last week on my request, and she was gracious. Amber, our marketing manager, met with her as well. And I asked her some pretty tough questions. And I got the sense that she, and even the university, and even yourself, understand what you've gotten yourself into. And yeah, it's about time you started taking a look at KHSU. And maybe it's about time you started suggesting that it was time to review the mission statement. And maybe it was time for all of you to win this battle with the university and not try to somehow blame the university for its aggression, but rather bring Peter out of his office. If he can't come out of his office, I think you need to bring him out of his office. I'm the president of a company. I'm used to making top-down decisions. I make them all the time. I get a wild hair up my ass and I decide we're gonna do something. And then I tell the other 85 people that work with me that we're gonna do it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's leadership. So I don't think there's anything wrong with getting an idea and manifesting that idea. The problem that I see, and what seems to have gotten everybody's panties in a bunch, is that the person that that leads them isn't being effective or successful. And I think the university has a responsibility to address that. I'm not going to pull my money just because Fretwell won't come out of his office. But I think that you, as his supervisor, have the responsibility to bring him out of his office and take a leadership role. And if you can't do that, I think that you're not doing your job. So I got the sense from Dr. Rosbacher that she wants KHSU to be successful. I think she's is looking at the future realistically, and I think the future is going to change. I asked her what her favorite local program was, and she couldn't give me a straight answer either. She loves classical music. I don't. But she couldn't name a program, and I challenge you to name one. But at any rate, I think that the CAB, in watching the way you're operating this evening, need to pull it together yourselves.
Yeah.
That's my message.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Leslie Quinn. Here's a little history for you. I came to HSU from Los Angeles in 1972. I finally found an FM station run by peers and fellow students. At the time, to become a KHSU DJ, you had to study mathematical problems to solve. If lightning and wind strikes the transmitter tower in Berry Ridge, insert electrical physics equation. People would study up, then drive to San Francisco to take the FCC radio operator licensing test. If you passed, you could be a DJ. At the time, the Vietnam War was in full swing. Nixon hadn't resigned. Times were different in 1972. KHSU wasn't operating 24/7, with the lion's share of programming done by passionate volunteers who worked for free, producing local and national shows, like Tim Cairns and Sharon Fennell, Alternative Review. Sister Soul brought attention to the inhumane prison conditions at the SHU in Pelican Bay, and specifically geared her show to incarcerated brothers that saw maybe half hour of daylight per day, and radio was their only connection to the world. Geraldine Goldberg, Tuesday Night Jazz, interviews with Julia Butterfly Hill. Sister Soul, Sharon Fennell, Thursday Night Talk, Eco News Report, Tim McKay, Friday Jam Down, Red Eye Lion, No Borders Radio with David C., Mudhouse Jazz, Tim Cairns, Wednesday Night Jazz Variety, Barry Thorpe, Jill Paydon, Jane Lestrange, Madame Kubla, Ramblin' Folk Show, Candace Ludlow, Giant Steps with Bud, Ghost Mozart, Darius Brotman, Mad River Anthology, Zabato Latinx, Pagan Dance Party with Ramona, Halima the Dreamer, Fogu, Vinny Devaney, Whippy Dip Radio Show, Paul Woodland, Kim, Redwood Airlines, Brooks Otis, Keys to the Highway, National Treasure, Ben Tankersley, Richard Stanwyck, Felicia Oldfather, Be Well, Classical Geniuses. Fast forward to 2018. Paul Woodland being let go, Whippy Dip Radio Show. Redwood Airlines no longer happening. Firing of Katie Whiteside. Just this last week, Kathleen Marshall, esteemed producer of Through the Eyes of Women, suddenly locked out of her production studio, and her key didn't work. We hear rumors. We hear words. We hear ugly words. Misogyny, racism. I know most of the CAB members. We all grew up together, birthed our babies together, went to school together, laughed, loved, grieved together. We all know where we live, in community, together. I have 2 giant Rubbermaid tubs of cassettes I taped from KHSU radio shows that I hope to share with my someday grandchildren. 2 giant tubs that are bigger than I am. And I wanted to, if I wanted to press a button for infotainment, there's all too much reprogrammed pablum for the masses out there. We're different here behind the redwood curtain. And will the D for diversity become the die in diversity?
I just wanted to say a couple of things. I'm not sure. Were you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you know, Craig, you make some statements, and I just have to say that some of them have been rather deceitful tonight. And I found some of Peter's statements fairly deceitful. Not fairly. They've been patently not true. Your assessment of staff sentiment and the breakdown of how we feel about Peter and his leadership or lack thereof is incorrect. I'm part of that staff, and I know that there are a couple of people that perhaps do support Peter and what he's done and his behavior, and there are a number of us remaining that do not. So just making those statements doesn't really fly for a lot of us here, whether we're intimate with that information or not. And that's something that Peter needs to know. He had a meeting with Lorna and I today and made a number of false statements there that you just contradicted tonight. So be careful about that, really. We're an honest crew, and it's really not okay to have those deceitful statements put out there. Really not okay. We're doing good work here. We love this station, we love this community, we love this university. The majority, I think, of the volunteers have some association with the university, whether having been students or staff or faculty at some point. We're in earnest. We're a genuine people. And please, the deceit needs to stop. It really does. And there are a lot of wonderful folks here that know a lot about leadership and a lot about mission statements and vision statements, and they've given some wonderful advice about careful, thoughtful, effective ways of going about that. And it doesn't sound like you, nor Lisa, nor the cabinet have gone about it in a very effective and healthy way. And that's something to reconsider.
Hello. Is this going through? Yes. Yeah. My name is Corinne Fragoni. I'm one of the hosts of a program called Through the Eyes of Women. And what I'm observing, I'm glad you like democracy now. Most of us like democracy now. What I see is a bit of a contradiction. First of all, years ago there was a big hullabaloo with Democracy Now! And KPFA, so you probably know about that.
No,
so
right here.
I think most nonprofits go through disruption, and out of disruption, hopefully something good will come. But I see that you feel, because HSU is the owner of KHSU, it follows Phil's thinking as a owner, you are responsible and you have to insert your own ideas, perceptions. And unfortunately, you and Peter apparently have come in with a very negative view of KHSU staff and workings. That's not a good way to start in a position of management. If you really do feel that there's a lot of division among the staff, then you get a mediator and you work it out. You don't have to, but I see you as believing in a hierarchical kind of organization versus a collaborative. And as I've said before, this is unfortunately a reflection of what's going on in the country. And as a manager, you have a choice to either try to bring people together or to polarize. What's happening now? We're getting polarized across the country, and that's what's happening at KHSU. But you still have a choice. We're in Humboldt. We're behind the redwood curtain. We have a little bit more leeway. So I would encourage you to think more positively instead of coming in saying what's wrong, which I still don't know what's wrong. It's a lot of rhetorical questions. I'd love to hear what you actually thought was wrong. What's right about it? And let's work on that. Let's amplify it. But I don't hear that from you or Peter. It's all what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong. Now, a big mistake was made with firing Katie. But what it did do, if Peter hadn't fired Katie, I'm afraid that your agenda would have been more insidious. And the same issues would now arise with this idea of more of a patriarchy, more of a hierarchical kind of management. And you're working with a radio station that has run fairly well collaboratively. And I just wonder, KHSU can be a tool for the university, but not dictated to what, you have to tell the community what we want. It's more, let's have a collaborative relationship and say KHSU has is a powerful communication tool for the university, but it has to be a back and forth kind of relationship. The other thing you have said is, these ideas that you've come up, they're great ideas. They've been there all along, but why do you have to take credit for it? They've been there. Let's start with a blank. Are you willing to rip this paper up and just start from the beginning? That would be great. I think that would be a good start. And that's what I recommend. I also wonder how, if you're really thinking hierarchical, if you feel so responsible that if something goes wrong, the university is responsible. Well, KHSU has been around for how many years? 40, 50? 40. And it has survived, and so has the university. So why all of a sudden do you feel very responsible? I do see administrators begin to feel responsible. They feel crushed between state responsibility, university responsibility, community. And I feel that you can walk a line between the two that brings out the best on both sides. And you don't have to come in feeling nervous or anxious about something may go wrong. The other thing about the FCC regulations, I bet there's a lot of people here who know a lot more about the FCC regulations and what can pass and what doesn't than you, although maybe you have taken FCC training. Have you?
Actually, as an undergraduate, I worked as the production director at KUER at the University of Utah, and I held a second-class FCC license, but no, I'm not an expert.
Yeah. So, it might have been a good idea to get somebody who really knows and say, what is really important here? Let's choose our battles. We can't go to the little things and keep creating a lot of conflict. Choose your battles, and they should be bigger ones. We're working in a very destructive environment right now all around us. Let's create something that's more positive. And I hope that you don't feel, yes, you're going to feel defensive. You're in that position. You've chosen a position to be an administrator. You're going to get it from all sides. But you got to just let a lot of things go and work with goals, but hopefully goals that are more in cooperation with what the community wants and what the staff wants. That would be, just let go of that shield and open up. And people aren't trying to get you. They're trying to establish, reestablish what was a pretty good station.
Do you have any answers for her before I start?
To what question?
In your replies, I don't know. That's up to you.
No, I
just didn't want to interrupt you, sir.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Well, my question is, how do you propose to work out the differences in what a lot of people in the community perceive versus what you perceive? What we perceive as problems versus what you perceive as problems. You are in a position of leadership, but good leaders don't feel like leaders. They don't do that if they're really good, and I would assume you want to be a good leader.
Right, so my hope was that this document would be a starting point. My intention was that the CAB would spend the month of August figuring out what sort of input they wanted to gather so that we could proceed, and that includes looking at the timeline. I would like to have this piece of work done by the end of the fall semester, because I think these things can drag on far too long. So it's an aggressive timeline, I understand that, but I think that's how we go about this. And yes, I understand these are all obvious things. I have to tell you, there is no written statement that the university cabinet can look at for the radio station. So it's about time that we do this.
But let's start from the ground up. I don't think we're in disagreement with that.
You suggest to tear this up, that's fine with me. I just meant for you not to have to start with a blank sheet of paper.
But
it was just a starting point.
Okay, so are you willing to start with a blank sheet of paper?
Sure.
We may come up with the same thing.
It could be. That would be fine.
Yeah. And I do want to say, I do appreciate what the CAB is doing. You're struggling with trying to collaborate between administration and community, and There will be differences. I do appreciate your taking our voice and expressing opinions. Oh, sorry. Did you hear me? Thank you, CAB.
Thanks for calling that out.
First of all, I want to thank you for coming tonight, Mr. Rook. Thank you for showing up. My name is Rick Cooper, and I'm just one of the hundreds of years of experience in radio in this room, and that was a very serious comment. We have people right here with 40 years, just one person. For myself, I've worked at 4 different radio stations. 3 of them are community-based radio stations. I've been host and producer and an advisor in various capacities at those stations. I'm one of the few founding members of KMUT Radio. Been on every seat in that station. So I want to address some of what I've heard tonight, and you know, I heard you say you want KHSU to be the best hybrid it can be. Well, first of all, I travel a lot. I travel all over, and I always listen. I'm always on the left of the dial, as they say. I listen to community radio at different locations. And of my observation and experience, KHSU is the best hybrid station I have ever listened to. Completely serious about that, sir. Completely serious. They have a great mix of bringing NPR, Democracy Now!, relevant pre-produced programs, and local programs. It is extremely special, this fine little line that they're treading here at the station. And I would like you to do what you have to do to come to understand that. It is special. You know, I looked at your draft, and a couple things stood out to me. One is that on this draft, there is not one word mention of music. It says nothing about music. That seems like either a real oversight or something that plays into the kind of concern that I think other people have. KHSU, I'm a founder of KMUT. KHSU plays the best music in the North Coast. I hear things on the station that I'm amazed by. The hosts are quality, and they bring real experience. So this is something that I don't know how that could be left off. You say that you want to expand the diversity, expand giving voice to different communities. Well, I mean, a number of people have spoken to that and how KHSU does that already. But what that means is, if you're expanding the voices, that means you're eliminating some voices. So that means if you're going to bring in new people, you have to cut the old people. So do you see that as a concern? I mean, do you see that not as a concern, but as a way that things some of these people may have to go to make way for new people?
I think there will be changes. I think one of the challenges KHSU faces is we are still very stuck on the notion of terrestrial radio. I don't think we have fully exploited digital delivery. So perhaps there are certain elements of programming that would be better suited to digital or on-demand delivery. I don't know how all of that works. I know that we can get there. We did expand significantly with Radio Bilingue, and we did that by buying a whole new radio station. We went out and raised the money to do that. So it does not necessarily mean somebody has to get kicked off the air in order to add somebody else.
Well, I want you to keep this in mind about our communities here in Trinity, Humboldt, Mendocino, and Del Norte. I live off the grid. All the data that I get comes off my phone because I tether. I don't listen to a lot of podcasting and the internet radio. Why? Because I can't afford it. I can't burn up all my data. So you have probably a majority of people in this community who don't have Wi-Fi access, who don't have that to be able to listen to those digital programs. I'd like you to keep that in mind. And in light of how they're saying you want to get a diversity of voices, well, they canceled Redwood Earlines, which was on back when I was a programmer in 1986 and 87, so 30 whatever years, they canceled Red Airlines, which, as I understand it, is the only children's program that was on the air, and they put on another Spanish-speaking program, which is fine, it's an okay program. But I mean, if you want diversity, why does someone cut out children's programming? If you want diversity, why do we cut out an independent comedic voice like Harry Shearer, who isn't aligned with all these different big mega public media entities, and then put in Hidden Brain, which is another NPR clone show, you know, which is a fine show, but you're having less diversity each time you do that. And I don't understand that. It doesn't make sense. So what I want to mention is that let me ask you this question, sir. Can you make a commitment to maintaining the same percentage of locally based programming and to imported programming? I think if you made a commitment to that, I know I would sleep better. And that would, you know what I'm saying, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, so is that reasonable for you to make that kind of a observation? That you realize that the number of hours that are allocated now to locally based programming would be not diminished, and you know, within an hour or two maybe, and canned and outside programming, that percentage would stay about the same. How do you feel about that, sir?
So I will make that commitment with the understanding that you've just put a whole bunch of caveats on that. One of the things we have to do is we have to serve an audience. Some of you may know we stopped buying the ratings books 3 years ago. So one of the things we have to do is start to understand who our audience is, where they are, what they want. Because we have an obligation to serve an audience. But yes, I'll make a commitment to that.
Well, I mean, so then the thing about community radio, and I don't know if you are, you know, I've gone to many meetings with people about this. I was recently working on another radio station in another state, helping them develop their programming community. And what we would talking about is the diversity and what is not available within the airwaves. What is also not there. Okay, so we don't want to put in what Jefferson Public Radio is doing. We don't want to put in what KHUM's doing. We want KHSU to be its own thing. So
right, and let me, if I may, that's why I'm hedging a bit on that answer, because I don't know what that mosaic looks like. KHSU can afford to serve audiences that commercial stations can't. We need to be aware of what Jefferson Public Radio is doing. So it's a patchwork quilt, and I don't know what that looks like. It's going to take all of us working together to figure
If I
that
can
out.
address that for a moment, that is work of the CAB, what you're speaking of right now, Rick. That is stuff that we have had discussions on over the years, and over the last couple of years, more of our discussions have been about terrestrial radio versus digital, how to maintain it, because we are a unique community, what diversity is out there, how to reach people. And Jesse has done a great job with finding the money to work on that. So with the staffing that we have, staffing of paid and volunteers, and the CAB, those are issues that have been worked on and have for many years and are coming to fruition now. And when we can turn this around, it's going to keep skyrocketing and moving forward. So know that what you're speaking of is more of a CAB issue than an issue for Mr. Rupp.
thank you, I appreciate that correction. I have one final comment for you, sir, and that is regarding in my travels and the radio that I listen to, just from my perspective, inadvertent FCC violations happen all the time at all stations. I know I listen to KPFK a lot when I'm in Los Angeles. That's the most powerful radio station west of the Mississippi. And for quite a while, they weren't putting up their legal ID right before Democracy Now! You know, and that's not because they don't want to or they're being rebels. That's because just failure. You have a lot of people trying to make it right. So I think, and if we called at KMUT, if we called the FCC every time something happened or somebody swore on the air or something, we just might as well leave the phone open, you know? I mean, and of course I'm kidding, but I mean, I'm saying, please don't blow up what is a very minor thing. And to this audience, as people have said here, we don't accept that as a reason for why there should be change here. That is something that goes on at all stations, sir. Thank you for your time.
I wanted to amplify on the FCC thing and piggyback on what he said and what Corinne had said. I think you got some feedback when you said Peter self-reported. My experience is that stuff gets over the air. I was the host of Thursday Night Talk when I had a guest and he said something and I put my finger up there and it's like, no, 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 no. What I asked the engineer to do, because it's the engineer's responsibility, is to write that down, to record it, to say that it was an outburst of expression. Now those things are to be kept in-house. If you have somebody from the outside who doesn't like your station, they call the FCC. It's up to them. It's up to people, and then the FCC decides, are we going to investigate this or not? I have never heard of a self-reporting general manager because a curse word went over the air as an expression, an outburst expression on a public affairs program. Just never heard of it.
So let me just clarify. Peter Fretwell got a telephone call from the FCC. He consulted with me and said, what do I do? I know that we have these violations. I'm the one, I made the choice. I said, Peter, I think we need to self-disclose them.
The FCC called Peter about that?
The FCC called Peter. He didn't know what it was about. He checked with me. He said, I think it may be about these violations. And I said, my recommendation to him was, go ahead and self-report them. It won't hurt us. We should be upfront with it. So that was my decision. Don't put that one on Peter.
Can I ask a point of clarity? Did FCC call and leave a message, and he did not call to see what they wanted, and he then consulted with you? Or he called and they called and he answered and said, let me get back to you?
No, I believe that it was a message. He checked with me and said, what do I do?
I have a hard time believing that. But if he didn't know what they were calling for, it's moot.
Right, okay. I have a hard time believing they would call about saying the word shit 3 times on the radio. I just have a hard time believing the FCC's going to write.
But we don't know what they called for because he didn't respond to a message. He responded to an instruction from the Vice President of Advancement to self-report. So unless he asks Peter, unless Peter goes back to the FCC of who asked that question, we won't know what they called.
So we don't know necessarily why they called and left a message.
We have no idea.
Yeah.
Wait, but today in our meeting with Peter, he said that there was a complaint. If I recall, he did say that in our meeting. Those were his words, and you can confirm with him. But he said that there was a complaint, and I asked, well, what was the nature of that complaint? And he shook his head. He didn't respond. And he then said, he self-reported, I believe.
So this is a completely different story, basically, than what we were previously told.
How is it a different story?
We were told that there were these outbursts from guests, and that after discussion with you, Peter called the FCC.
No, I'm sorry. Peter got a call from the FCC, sought my advice. I urged him to self-report.
He got a message from the FCC,
Okay,
so that should be clear.
Okay, a message.
And what was the message? Did the message say, Mr. Fretwell, we're calling because there's been a report of obscenities over the air?
I don't know. I didn't ask him.
My name is Eric, and I'm the other Thursday night talk show host which had an FCC violation, and I've been sort of feeling guilty. Did I get Katie fired? There was no way. It was a caller, and I don't even think she was aware that she said it. I was trying to get her to do it, and there's certainly nothing I could have done to anticipate. There was definitely nothing Katie could have done. So I really hope this wasn't, what it was about. But again, I feel guilty. So go ahead. Okay, well, thank you. The other thing I wanted to say about things is, part of the problem we have with the whole controversy after Katie was was let go is, obviously you can't talk about it, but usually in a situation like this, people don't have to be told because they know. I mean, recently, when the city attorney of Eureka got fired, okay, they couldn't talk about it either, but Los Cos Altos had like a list 2 paragraphs long as to why she was fired. So usually it's not a mystery. You don't have to tell it. So I hope you can appreciate that it's just a complete shock to everybody who's worked with her, trying to rack our brains as to why, what could have been to bring it about. And we just can't, it's inconsistent with our understanding of her personality, it's inconsistent with our understanding of her professionalism. And I don't know where to get beyond it, but it's just, I keep trying to think, and I can't put anything together on it. And I just, that she is beloved. We keep talking about her like she's dead. She's not. She has another job, but it's the mystery aspect of this that it's just going to be really hard for us to get behind, and I don't know what the answer is.
Well, if you've not got a response to Eric, I'll proceed. Mr. Ruck, it must be very difficult for you to be here and realize that almost the entire audience is not in agreement with your positions. I have to say about this draft statement that you presented to us, it looks to me like a red herring. This doesn't contribute to anything. Rather, it's a diversion that you presented us with. And finally, let me say, you're the management here. A principle of management is to hold those who work for you accountable for what they do. And I think what Mr. Fretwell has done is utterly inexcusable. Perhaps your best move here is to terminate Mr. Fretwell.
I want to make one extra comment about Katie's dismissal. In the union, there was a bit of a question and answer with Mr. Rook. And he said firing Katie was very difficult, but management should be given the benefit of the doubt. My question is why? Why should you be given the benefit of the doubt? When all of us knew her and how she worked much more than any of you. He had been harassing her for months. We all know that. A lot of us know that personally. Why isn't he being investigated? Why is his word taken more than all these other people? I just don't feel like the people that worked with Katie were listened to, and the decision was made to terminate her. And whatever your reason given that you can't talk about, it just wasn't fair. And I think we all know that it wasn't really justified, whatever you might say in private. So he was harassing her. I know it. People who worked with her knew it. She told me about it. I witnessed it. Why isn't Katie's, didn't really want to make waves, so she kind of took it. But you stand with Fretwell. That's troubling to me, that Katie's word or Katie's actual performance is not taken into consideration, but the word of some man who came here and has been here for 15 months and decides that he doesn't like her is. That's troubling to me.
I guess I'm just going to follow that up a little bit, and there were a number of us, paid and volunteer, that witnessed Katie's treatment. And she was harassed in a number of ways, and one of those ways was being professionally undermined and left out of communications that were absolutely relevant to her job. And I'm just going to say this to those of you that don't already know, that's something that I'm now experiencing at work. I'm being left out of communications around some of, and Lorna is too, apparently. I'm being left out of communications regarding some of the grants that I've written that are bringing more diversity to our station. I just need to say that and share that. That's something, that's one of the things that Katie experienced prior to being fired.
You're all female. So, yeah, so I didn't hear you. I said you're all female.
So time is getting away from us. It is almost 10 minutes to 9. I want to give the last few people the opportunity to speak. Let's be courteous, try and keep it to the point and short, because there's people we have not heard from yet tonight at all that would like to speak.
Hi, I'm a member of the University Committee, and I'm also a member of the local NAACP. I have worked at 3 public institutions of higher education at 3 different places in the university, in the country, the West Coast, the East, South, and the Midwest. And thank you for your comments. My experience has been with the corporate model for governing, with this top-down model. What employees and volunteers who are working in the university need to do is to document the harassment and abuse that they are experiencing, to make an official complaint with the HR department, which, contrary to what you're saying, it's been my experience that the HR departments, and we see this in the Me Too movement, are there to protect the university from lawsuits and costly fines, not to protect the employees. So I would say this is a time for us as a community to wake up about the institution and see how it treats its employees, particularly the employees it can hire and fire at will. And that we need to be serious about standing behind them as these employees go through the very difficult process of filing complaints and possible legal repercussions, lawsuits. Thank you.
I'm going to give you a little more detail about what happened, what I saw happen. I recorded someone, a guest, who was being deported to Mexico. I mentioned it to Peter. He demanded to be put on the air raw, no editing. I saw it put Katie and Jess in tremendous stressful situation, and myself, because I had to go in between classes and try to cut a promo for it. And I teach here. And I knew it was wrong, just totally very wrong. Wrong for the guest, wrong for the station, wrong for Katie and Jess. I was left speechless. And that's why I don't want him to be my producer.
Oh, I thought I was on. Hello, there I am. Hi. My name is Brian Curtis. I'm a volunteer at KHSU on air. Sorry, this is kind of cycling way back to the very beginning. Maybe I should have spoken up sooner. But I'm just curious if I could get a little more insight from you. Oh geez, the buzzing started. There's been a lot of sort of contradiction as far as or just vagary, as far as the vision that you yourself seem to want to see this station taken in as much as you have a say in that, and certainly you do. There have been contradictions just sort of in your statements heretofore, which are a little troubling in just this sense of like, oh, on the one hand, the university hasn't really paid attention to KHSU until just now. On the other hand, you've been here for 6 years. So you've left us in this sort of salutary neglect, which everyone else seems to think was working just fine. But then we're also getting these sort of mixed messages of like, oh, well, I always trust my managers. oh, my manager at Subkiss was telling me things were wrong 5 years ago. And so if there were issues of concern now, why did you wait so long to address them? More specifically, what are these issues, and how does spending 6 months turning this 8-point plan into a ratified document address or solve any of them?
So here is my, if I, is this on?
I'm not sure if it's the battery.
I think the battery's dead. Let me just try speaking up.
You've been here too long. The battery's on.
So I am not the one to set the mission and vision for KHSU. I think in my world there are 3 important elements of whatever that final product is. I think it is a hybrid station. It is a station that has strong local programming that is the best of community radio, and it is a station that meets that national public radio sort of audience and serves an increasingly Spanish-speaking audience. It is a true hybrid. And I appreciate the experience that others have had, but that's a rarity in this country, and it's difficult. It's hard to create a hybrid sort of radio station. The second part that I think is an important part of it is we've got to figure out this digital delivery business. We're not exploiting that the way we could. And I appreciate people who live off the grid, but that's not everybody. And there are audiences that we can reach less expensively than using a terrestrial transmitter to broadcast. The third part that I think should be an important part of it is a much greater opportunity for undergraduate students to have on-air radio experience. That's me, but there's got to be some sort of group process to flesh that out, to decide what all of that is. So that's the best I can do.
What about KRFH? Don't we get experience with that station?
KRFH should be part of this. KRFH is one of the 8 licenses that the university owns.
Elizabeth used to do a journalism class with those students, one of the previous
And in fact, right now, I'm currently working with a couple of interns from the university. Actually, boy, I'm working with 7 different HSU students right now. So in fact, we are doing that, and we have been doing that, and we are a hybrid station. We've been a hybrid station since inception, I think, yeah?
Yes.
So it's...
So what is wrong? As Brian asked you, what's wrong? We'd like to know what you see is wrong.
So I get frustrated. I described Peter Fredwell as a change agent. I thought that was a compliment. It panicked people. A little while ago, I explained it as a metamorphosis. I used that word. That panicked people. This week, I have been talking about let's improve. Improve has turned into suddenly a negative. What do you mean improve? If you really think KHSU is perfect, then there probably is no point to all of this. I think it can be better. I think we can improve. I think there's a better future. I don't know how to do that other than to get after it like this.
I think we agree that you don't.
That is not to say that there is anything wrong with what we're doing now. It could be better. That's all I'm arguing.
Many of us think that Mr. Fretwell is an obstacle to moving forward.
I understand that.
Okay, right here, second row from the top.
Yes.
Yeah, so my name is Dorina Espinosa. I'm a community member and listener of the station. And I guess what's been perplexing for me and frustrating, and certainly nothing new that I'm going to say that hasn't been said already, but I just hope, and really it's hope at this point, because I'm not seeing evidence other than hope that I can walk away from this meeting tonight, is that you get the clear message that many people, staff, volunteers, community members, don't see the GM as the leader that he has the responsibility to do, and as the supervisor of this gentleman, that you see that something needs to change. And it's just odd to me that when a vacancy was created, when Katie was terminated, that this individual who was hired as a change agent actually didn't take that opportunity in which change was created through the vacancy of a position to then lead as the change agent and divvy up those roles and responsibilities and help people to understand how that fits into some vision that obviously exists, but nobody here seems to know the vision of where the station is to go. And so there's this mixed message. And even Lisa Rosbacher's response to the CAB's letter of no confidence in the GM, her response was even off topic as well. She went back to this issue of wanting to respect and keep confidential personnel issues. There was nothing in the letter from CAB about personnel issues. And so it's this kind of smoke and mirror that everybody here seems to have articulated, and it's as if that simple message that leadership seems to be lacking. I can't speak to how it relates to you, but it's obviously lacking in the change agent you hired. And so I guess I'm stuck with hope that you'll manage this individual or recognize that this individual can't actually act in the capacity for which he was hired, to say it's time to move on and find the individual who can actually serve in that change agent vision. And it's not, I don't think anybody here thinks that improvement isn't a goal. I don't think that's the message at all from these people. It's obvious that they've taken this responsibility to heart. People care. It's not just a job, it's not just volunteering on the board. People are passionate, and I hope that that's been heard as well. But to kind of take away from this a message that, this individual, Mr. Fretwell, is the change agent, but there's no evidence of that. There's voids. And as people have said, there's chaos. So there's no evidence that that's happening from the people here, and yet that's kind of what you're going back to. So I'm just perplexed, and maybe it's too much to ask for leadership in this position for which this individual occupies, or leadership from you or Dr. Rosbacher on helping the community at large understand how changes that have been created and will be created in the future fit into some existing vision. And it's just a frustration that I keep coming back and how does this work? And so anyway, I just really do hang on hope that you're getting a clear message that many people are not seeing management from the general manager, and many people are not seeing anyone stepping up into the position of leadership to help us understand what is the vision.
Are you happy with this? Are you happy with them?
Mr. Rucko, was a question here?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what to say.
You gonna answer?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, at this point, Peter is meeting my expectations. He is not a perfect employee. From my perspective, his job is not in jeopardy. And I conveyed that to the staff, that it is my responsibility.
So everything's going as planned?
No, everything is not going as planned, Danielle. Don't put words in my mouth.
No,
I have a feeling that it is time for a lot of people to get on with their lives, so I'm going to make this really short. I'm Lori Dangler. I have been part of the station for a very, very long time, and I have a professional relationship with many of you here, including Dr. Rudd. This issue is not going away. It has been going on. We're now on the third CAB meeting, and it is not going away. The next pledge drive, if things continue as they are right now, will be a disaster. It will be a public relations disaster for the university, of which I feel very, very strongly about, and we are all
many of us here are part of that university community. So it is absolutely essential to figure out a way forward that is different than the spinning of wheels. The timetable to doing a new plan is not going to solve that problem. It's a problem of public perception, and those of us in this world know that public perception is huge. We all want to work together to move forward, and absolutely, we can do better. I can do better, all of us can do better. But where we are right now is not moving us forward. So we need to come up with something soon to be able to salvage this gem, because it's not going away.
So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Lauren, I'll give you the mic in a moment. Mr. Ruck, when we had one of those meetings with you, I tried to give you an idea of what the community was like, how diverse the community is, how we go from people with great critical thinking skills to people who have no critical thinking skills. In this room, you have an incredible amount of institutional knowledge. People who have seen the station go up and down and in the middle and all around. From the time when we did have the opportunity to have lots of students take advantage of it. We have a CAB. I bring it up all the time as a former volunteer coordinator. For the 8 years I've been on this board, from the time we lost a volunteer coordinator, I say almost every single month, we need a volunteer coordinator. Take advantage of the institutional knowledge in this room. Ask them what worked in the past. How was it successful? How is it different now as our culture has changed as a community? Talk to them. Don't talk at them. Talk to them. You will get much further, and we will be able to heal some of these wounds if things start, there's more transparency, there's more genuineness, and if you ask, what is the history? How can we take from that and learn from it? Because otherwise we're just, as Lori was saying, keep spinning our wheels, keep spinning our wheels, keep spinning our wheels, because people are not feeling heard. Whether it's CAB members, whether it's community members, whether it's staff, volunteers, and paid, there needs to be more transparency, there needs to be more genuineness, and we need discussion.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. Firstly, based on the draft, we broadcast to a very large population. Not only the north coast of California, but also the south coast of Oregon. That was left off. You're missing a major segment of our listening audience, terrestrially or otherwise. So I'm making that note. The second note, the comment in the draft that says expand the diversity of North Coast voices represented in local media. That's taken directly from a grant that Jessica Eden has been working on for over 6 years. So it predates Ed Subkis, who blocked it incidentally, Peter Fretwell, and Craig Ruck. Additionally, expanding the diversity. Peter, when we began discussing this, his eyes lit up. And his eyes lit up with dollar signs. Because poor people of color equate to grants. And that's what that was his motivation behind that. Riding on pain and the stories of people of color in this community. FCC doesn't find people, they sanction them. And usually not when people call to say, I did something bad, get me.
second but last comment. Craig, it was very painful and hurtful when you said what 1/3 of the staff felt, what another third of the staff felt, and what the last third of the staff felt. That was a divisive tool that only caused staff members to look at each other. Well, which third are you? Even though you said you didn't want to broach confidentiality by simply implying that, kind of did. Lastly, I submitted an email, or sent an email to the paid staff members and Peter and yourself, requesting another visit during our staff member meeting to get a little bit of clarity. And at that time you said Peter was the manager and it was his duty to manage his staff. So I said, well, since I didn't understand some of the audits and investigations that were taking place, I asked if we could get in writing what those audits were, from who, the timeline, and the what was the impetus behind each one, if it could be documented. I have yet to receive that, except for an attachment to a Lost Coast Outpost story of Lisa Rossbacher's letter that was dated a day after I made that request. So I'd like to ask again, can we get documentation of documentation supporting the impetus behind all of these audits and investigations, and if the staff could be informed as to when these would take place.
Okay, so let me clarify a couple of things. In your response to me, you told me that you were confused by me communicating to you instead of Peter. So I stepped back. Peter will communicate to you. That is his job. I overstepped my bounds. The letter that was published in the Lost Coast Outpost, and I have copies up here if anyone would like it, that is President Rossbacher's request to the California State University system for what is called an advisory review. That is the content that I discussed with the staff on the 11th. The President had been in communication with the Chancellor's office since before then. The actual hard copy letter is dated, what does it say, the 19th? So there's nothing nefarious going on in the dates here. That is what we have. That is what we know. For the rest of you who aren't clear...
on the 18th, I'm sorry, that was the 18th.
Okay, and I discussed it with the staff on the 11th, and the letter was signed by the President, the formal letter was signed by the President the day after you requested it. For those of you who aren't aware, and there's no reason you would know this, the California State University system operates an internal auditor. They're required by state law to do that. Among the things the internal auditor does is something called auxiliary reviews. It is a top-to-bottom review that a president can request. That's what President Rossbacher has requested. And in that letter, you see the things that I reviewed with the staff. It's going to be a broad look at the station. The idea is to have some outside group come in and take a look at it and make recommendations. They will make recommendations to the President. She will make those recommendations public. That work is starting. We don't know when. It depends on when they can get here. But I'd really like to have that work done about the same time that we have the vision work done, so that we can bring the two things together. We will have quite a list of things and recommendations and suggestions that we can all chew over. So you now know as much about the auxiliary review as I do.
So will the staff be alerted when these audits, when individuals will be on campus?
Sure, but we're going to invite these experts to come to campus and talk to anybody they want to, and ask any question they want, talk to anybody in the community that they want. So I'm sorry, I cannot tell you which day they will be here. I just don't know. It could be as early as mid-August, probably sometime in September. That's as much as I know about it.
Okay, it's almost 9:15. We have the majority of the CAB members that are still here have an over hour drive to get home. Does anybody want to say anything in closing before any CAB members want to say anything?
It would just be nice, it would just be really nice if we knew things that were going on with our station first before the news media. I read the president's letter on the Lost Coast Outpost. I had no idea. So it would have been nice had she emailed us as a group.
Thank you. Is there anything else that... Okay, so thank you all for coming. Hopefully next month we will be able to get to some of these agenda items that are very important, such as a retreat for the CAB, where we can talk about a lot of these matters that have not been addressed. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, Lorna.
Will the CAB and the administration coordinate dates for a town hall that we can discuss?
Yes, we will work with the administration and the station, and someone within the CAB will take on making sure that we coordinate a town hall meeting. So there's more opportunity for community input, and us as a CAB can try and figure out some of these things that are on the agenda and have been for 2 or 3 months now. All right.
I make a motion to.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for coming. Really appreciate your input.
Volunteer form you'd like to get to me, please do so before you leave. Thank you.
Laura, do you have them with you? Sure.
Yes.
They don't understand, but they probably understand it, they just don't want it.
I don't know if they understand. Within 24 hours.
Maybe it's something that turns on.
No, I gotta go fill out a form, volunteer form.
You have the draft, right?
Dedicated, they want the right thing, and everybody knows.